Good morning. It's good to be back with you here at Willette today. I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak in Tim's place. Like I told you earlier, he's already given me my instructions on what to teach and preach on. So I'm going to do that today, but I'm going to do it in a way that I want to do it, maybe not the way he would have done it. My wife couldn't be with me today. She has to work this afternoon in Cookville, so she's going to have to stay up that way. But again, I'm thankful to be here. I didn't take this picture, but I would love to see this side. I think probably Hugh, Wayne, and Joe, you probably got to see this, haven't you? Those northern lights, and that would be an amazing thing. And that's sort of on the theme that I want to talk about today, to at least get us to the point of where it is that I want to go. When you think about all the things that God has created and all the beauties that are there, we see Him, don't we? It's what Romans chapter 1, verse 20 tells us. All the things that we see in this life are proof that God exists and that He's there, that He is responsible for the creation and all good things. And I want to share something with you today, and it has a point. So if you'll bear with me, God has blessed me this year, and I've got to climb up on an airplane 2 different times and go out west. I love it out west, and I love to be able to go and to see those things, and I don't even remember where I took this picture. We were somewhere 30,000 feet in the air, and I love looking out the window, but just seeing His creation. But I got to go to Glacier National Park, and then a couple weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I got to go back, and we were in Yellowstone, and we got to go to the Grand Tetons and to see all those beautiful things. And while we were there, a lesson developed, and we're going to get to that. And I'm glad my wife's here because she's a big part of that. She'd probably get mad at me. And she knew I was going to talk about this, and it's okay. But I want you to just see some of the things that God created, and I can promise you, and those of you that have traveled different places, pictures don't do it justice. You know, I see something with my eyes, and then I look at my picture I took with my phone, and I think, I don't know, that's not even good. But we rented four-wheelers one day, and we rode all over the mountains of West Yellowstone, and this is one of those pictures. And you get up, and you're about 8,000 feet in elevation, and you can see, I don't know how far. But it is an amazing thing to see. And when you're out, especially in that part of the country, and you're traveling about, and this is inside of Yellowstone, and sunset comes about, and you can see those mountains in the background. I know God is real, don't you? I know that He made all of those things, and I know every time I see that sun go down, He is responsible. All of these beauties that we get to enjoy, and some of those winding canyons throughout Yellowstone, and you can see that white water, and you can enjoy how beautiful it is. I know that it's from God. This is a picture in Grand Teton as we were going up through Cascade Canyon and hiking, and that's where my sermon's going to come in a moment, and just to get to see those beauties and the mountains in the background. And this is some of the water in Glacier, the clearest water I've ever imagined seeing in my life. And I know God made it. You see, the problem when you go to all of these places and you go and you see a site and there's a sign, and the sign says millions of years ago this thing evolved from whatever happened, and this is why you see what you see today. That's garbage. That's James Watkins' hogwash, right? It's not true. God made it, and it's beautiful for us to enjoy. This is the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and that waterfall's 380 feet tall, higher than Niagara Falls, all of that water. And it's amazing. The picture doesn't do it justice. It's a beautiful place. This is that Grand Prismatic Spring and inside of Yellowstone, and if I could just get up above it and look down, that would be wonderful, but you can't do that. But God made that. God made that for us to see and us to enjoy. And this is a picture of the Grand Teton Mountains here, and this Genie Lake in the front, and you can see the reflection from the sun. And God made that. And boy, I sure did enjoy it. And I know some of you have too. But you know, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things inside these parks and these beautiful places that we may travel to go that you can't see from a car. You can't walk down a wooden trail, just a little piece and look at it overlook. And sometimes in order to get to some of the most beautiful places you can imagine, you've got to get on foot, you got to put on a backpack, and you've got to travel. You've got to go and you've got to do things that a lot of people won't do. You've got to go places that most people, they just prefer to stay in their car with their air conditioning on and their windows up, no bugs and no snakes and no grizzly bears and all of that, and everything is good and fine. But that's not me. I'd rather be somewhere else. When I go to all these places, I love to hike, and some of the most beautiful things I've seen is because I was able and God had given me the ability to walk. And while we were in Glacier, we went up and we hiked to Avalanche Lake. Avalanche Lake was created by an avalanche here in these mountains, and it come down and it stopped it up, and now you've got a beautiful lake, and you can see by the picture all of those water running out of those glaciers, and beautiful place. But we had to hike 2.5 miles uphill to get there. It sure was worth it. It was beautiful. These are a couple pictures of if you go up through Glacier and you get to Logan's Pass, and you can hike up to find the hidden lake, and this whole hidden canyon, and that's one of the pictures. Here's the hidden lake. It was a couple miles uphill in the snow. I took that picture. It was pretty tough. I had to drag my wife while she was sitting down through part of it because she couldn't stand up. But we hiked through the snow, and we got up to see what we wanted to see. And it was hard. It was tough, but it was worth it. This is a picture right at the base of the Grand Teton Mountain, and this is where this sermon came from. We went on this trip a couple weeks ago with another couple, some friends of ours, and the guy and myself, we had planned this hike. And we knew how far the hike was. And we knew that we were going to gain 1,000 feet in elevation during this hike. So it was going to be tough. But we didn't tell our wives. We didn't tell our wives. We were smart enough to realize that, maybe ignorance is better, right? So instead of walking around the lake to begin to hike, we paid the money and took the boat ride. Well, the stinking boat captain told us right before we got off, it's 4.6 miles one way to where it is you're going, and 4.6 miles back. Well, that ruined us. So then it kind of started. We've got to hike over 9 miles today. Yes, we're going to hike over 9. It's going to be worth it, though. So we begin our hike, and as we're going through here, this is the first part of it. And I'm over here, my arm around my wife, and I've given her the pep talk. Honey, you can do this. We've done things like this before, and it'll be worth it when we get to where we're going, and, just be positive. We can do it. So we keep going, and the trail gets tougher. More rocks, drop-offs on one side. If you fall, I guess that's it. And we keep going, and the trail gets a little rougher and a little rougher. And, I'm continuing my pep talk, and all during this time I said, honey, I'm going to preach this. She said, okay. I said, I'm going to preach this, and I'm going to use it in a way that hopefully that it will help somebody, because you see, in order to get to some of these beautiful places that I want to go, it's not an easy path. It's not something that's just paved and, is just level and flat. It's hard. Sometimes the path was overgrown. Sometimes, bugs were all around us, and mosquitoes and gnats and, all those creepy crawling things. And sometimes, I know that's not a great picture, but you see things on the trail that let you know that there's things out in front of you too. It's kind of reminds me of life, doesn't it? But, I was prepared. I took my bear spray out of my pocket, took a picture, and, you think, oh, that's silly, you won't need that. When I was in Glacier, I met a couple from Murfreesboro at church there Sunday morning. We talked, and, we're going to hike too, and they did, and I ran into them later that week, and they were walking on the trail, and went around a corner, and a grizzly bear was standing right in front of them. I asked him, I said, "Did you get a picture?" He said, "Uh-uh." So what'd you do? Nothing. He said, "I just stood there." You never know what you're going to face. Well, on this hike, there's a moose. We were within 20 yards of the moose, and that's wonderful and that's great, but also we got within about 80 yards of a grizzly. But you know, the whole time I'm going through my mind, if I face this, I've got to be in front, so he's going to hit me first, not her. And you're preparing yourself for all these things you might come to. But the point of all the hike is to get to where you're going. Now, this is not me. This is another picture. That's a little skinnier than me. But this is another picture. But the whole goal is to get to your destination, right? You want to get to where it is you're going, no matter how hard it is, because the payoff is worth it. I want to share some things with you I learned from hiking, and then we're going to make a spiritual application. Number one, if you're going to do things like this, you've got to learn to have a positive attitude. If you begin at the the bottom, the very beginning of the hike, and you say, I can't do it, and it's too hard, and there's no way I'm going to be able to finish, and what's going to happen? You're not going to enjoy it, are you? You see, on the way back down, my wife told me, she said, you're right. She said, we've got to see a lot of beautiful things because we're willing to do these things. Got to have a positive attitude. Not only that, you got to know where you're going. That's probably a big one, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere. You got to follow directions. You need to have a map. You need to make sure that you're going the right way and you know where you want to wind up. You know how to get back to the car. That's a big one. If you don't know how to get back to the car, you're in big trouble. But you got to know that. But not only that, you got to stay with your group. Number one rule I usually tell people of hiking, and I took some of these guys hiking when I was here, stay with the group. Don't ever get separated. You never know what's going to happen. I've heard stories of people getting broken legs and sprained ankles, and on the way down from this hike, my wife, her sugar dropped, and she was going to pass out, but we had sweet tarts in the backpack, so we was good. Everything was okay. Stay with the group. Don't separate. Be aware of your surroundings. Pay attention. I told you when you go to places like this, and not just places like this, if you're going to hike here, my sister-in-law and her aunt were at Stone at Joe Halfacre's house. Some of you know Joe Halfacre, don't you, Joe? And a mountain lion jumped out this past week and grabbed a chicken out of his backyard and ran back up in the woods. You never know what you're going to face. Be aware of your surroundings. Watch what's going on. And this spiritual application will be even better. But when I'm hiking in a place like this, I'm always listening. I'm always looking. I'm always paying attention. Because you don't know what you're going to face. But not only that, you got to be prepared for whatever it is you face. I go over things in my head. If I encounter this situation, what am I going to do? I've got all the things on me that I believe that I'm going to need in my backpack. I've got rope and first aid, and I've got water and snack. I've got all of these things that I'm going to need because there may be certain situations that I face. What about heaven? I put all of those pictures up there for one reason. You and I, and we have enjoyed some beautiful things that God made here. What do you think it's going to be like there? I can't imagine a place that is more beautiful than some of the things I've seen here. But God says it doesn't compare. God says my eye can't see it and my mind can't imagine it, and it's beyond me. And in Revelation 21, the Bible says that God takes through inspiration everything, the best things upon the face of this earth, and He combines them and He describes it as heaven. And I don't know about you, but that's my final destination. That's where it is that I want to wind up someday, but here's the thing. I've got to understand that it's not going to be easy. Jesus says, enter you in by the straight gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many people, most people in this world are going down that wide path, that broad path. He says, but straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to eternal life. And only a few people will do that. And you see, I can take that verse and I can compare it to exactly what I've been talking about. These places that are up in the mountains that you've got to work to get to, and you've got to strive and it's difficult, most people pass them on by. I don't know how many people on that last hike I was telling you about. I saw women in high heels. And they didn't make it very far, and they turned around and they went back to the car. But most people quit, right? Because it's hard. It's difficult. It's not as easy as just saying, well, I'm just going to one day become a Christian and then I'll get to go to heaven and no strings attached. It doesn't work like that. I want you to look just a little bit more. I use the King James Version. It's not the best translation of this verse. The New King James is going to say, narrow is the gate and difficult is the way. And that's exactly what these words mean. The word straight in the King James, it's from the base that means narrow. There are obstacles all around you, and there's only a singular path in the place that you need to be. The word for narrow in the King James, New King James will say difficult, and look what it means. It means it's a place of affliction, it's a place that you might suffer tribulation. It is a hard path. But I'm going to tell you, the destination is worth it. And if you don't ever begin the journey, you will never arrive at the destination. I want you to notice something else. Look at this verse. He says, enter by the straight gate. If he tells me to enter, what does that mean as far as I am concerned? That's something I've got to do, right? Where does he say enter? Where's any kind of entrance into the broad gate, the wide gate? He doesn't say that. Because you can do whatever you want to do when you're already on the wide path, the broad path. You see, the gate that leads to eternal life is a gate that is very narrow in the sense that Jesus says, I am the way, John 14, verse 6. He's the only way. He says, no man comes to the Father except through me. He says in Revelation 3, verse 20, He's the door. He's the door. He's the terms of entrance. And if you and I are going to head down the path that leads to that destination of heaven, we've got to go through Jesus. And it's not an easy path. You know, I truly wish, most people believe that you can say some kind of prayer at some kind of bench or altar or whatever it may be, and then you become saved. I had a guy tell me the other day, my wife got saved, and now I'm just so tickled to death. And then they think everything's over, right? Do whatever you want to do. Live however you want to live. You do that one singular small event, and that's it. That doesn't tie with this verse, does it? He says it is a narrow gate and it is a difficult way. But what I just described, that doesn't describe anything that's narrow or difficult. That's easy. That's easy. Just go and be saved and go on about your business and do whatever you want to do. That's not what the verse says. Christianity is a tough life. It's a tough life. God never intended for people that were wanting to turn around and quit and give up and all of these things to go to heaven. Now, He would want everybody to go to heaven. He would love for everybody to do that, but they're not going to do it. You say, I want you to look at this picture I found. I want you to picture this as that road to heaven. Narrow. Not a whole lot of people on it, are there? Sometimes it's uphill. Sometimes it's rocky. Sometimes it seems to be overgrown. Sometimes it seems that there's something around every corner to get us. You ever feel like that? In my life, it seems like every time I think things are rolling right along good, what happens? Oh, Satan will come in there and he'll throw something right in your way. Every time. I want us to take those principles that we talked about just a moment ago and make a spiritual application and a lesson to be yours. I want you to think about all the things that we talked about on hiking those trails and getting to those places, and I want you to turn them into spiritual. If you're going to go down the road to heaven, you've got to have a positive attitude. You've got to. I'm going to tell you right now, you can come here, you can do the things that are taught to become a Christian, but you can say within yourself, I can't do it, and it's too hard, and people are mistreating me, and this is happening, and that's happening, and And there's just no way that I'm going to finish, and what's going to happen? You're right back on the broad path. It's impossible to be up on the narrow, difficult path to heaven and have a bad attitude. It's impossible. Because you can't do it. But not only that, you got to know where you're going. That's true in the physical sense upon this earth when we're walking wherever it is that we're going. That's true in the spiritual sense. I told you guys earlier, you got to pay attention to the signs, and you need to have a map, and you need to have a plan. And what about it when it comes to spiritual? It's a simple lesson, not difficult. Do you know where you're going? Do you know where the path leads to get you there? I hope so. You start at the narrow gate. You start by giving your life to Jesus Christ through that simple, humble obedience. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. But then you continue upward. I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. Now, that's hard, isn't it? Matthew chapter 6, 13 and 14 tells us there Jesus teaching us how to pray. You're on that path and you're going. He says, if you want God to forgive you, what do you got to do? You got to forgive other people. Well, that's hard, isn't it? That's hard. There's so many things that we could look at and go through this life that is hard. But we've got to understand and we've got to know that this Bible is our map that shows us exactly where it is that we're going. But the question is, do we have it? Do we use it? Do we know what we need to know to get to where it is that we are headed? Because I promise you, if you don't, you're in trouble. And you're right back on the wrong path. And not only that, stay with your group. Stay with your group. I want to tell you something. We said Christianity's hard. It's a difficult path, and so many obstacles in life that we face are hard, but you know what? Every time that I've faced something in my life, if I'm with my group, what happens? I've got help. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, the Bible teaches, I believe it's verse 9 through 12, that two are better than one. If one falls down, who's there? Somebody's there to pick him up. Somebody's there to help him along. If you and I are going to travel this path to our final destination, we've got to surround ourselves with help. And if we don't, odds are we're not going to make it. Odds are we're going to turn around, we're going to quit, we're going to give up. Don't ever think you can go it alone. I promise you, you can't. You can't. God knew that. Be aware of your surroundings. Just like I said, if you're walking out and you need to pay attention to what's going on, don't we need to do the same spiritually? So many times we walk through this life and we're oblivious to things around us and things that we are feeding ourselves, whether it be through social media or TV or whatever it is. I am convinced today that social media and TV, they cause so many problems in people's lives. Because we fill our lives with garbage and we don't even realize it because that's just what the norm is, right? I was watching a TV show just the other night. Here I said shouldn't be doing a lot of that, but I was. It wasn't a bad show. But they went into this black neighborhood and all these guys, they had the guns and they were ready to shoot each other and all of this. And I thought, why in the world is there any wonder that that's what we see on the news every day? Because that's what is portrayed to everybody that sees it, right? And if you and I, as a Christian on this road to heaven, if we don't pay attention to all those things around us, if we don't really watch what we're putting into our hearts and our minds, we're in trouble. We're going to get off track. We're not going to be on the path we need to be on anymore. Jesus said those things that proceed out of a man, they come from what a man puts in himself, right? If you feed yourself garbage, that's what's going to come out as garbage. And we've got to be aware. Satan's around every corner. Satan is looking for any opportunity that he has against any one of us. Number 5, lastly, be prepared for whatever you face. You say, well, there's no way I can be prepared for everything that I might encounter in my life. Those of you that were in Bible class this morning, what's the first thing we talked about? John chapter 16. Jesus said, I am telling you these things now. Why? Because so you'll know what's coming. Do you realize He has already told us everything that is coming right here in this book, and He's told us how to handle it, how to do all of these things. He's told us that He's there, and if we'll lean on Him, He'll be with us, and He'll get us through it. And brethren, you and I, we've got to be prepared. We've got to study and think and pray and meditate on everything that we may encounter in this life and be ready for it so we're not caught off guard. Why is it that Peter said in 1 Peter 5:8, be sober and be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour? Because God understands we need to be ready. We need to be ready. He's lurking around every corner. Simple lesson. Simple lesson. Question is, which one of these paths are you on? I said one of them had terms of entrance. One of them, he says you have to enter, therefore do what he says to enter. The other, you're just on. And a lot of times people don't even know it. Which one looks easier? That's obvious, right? One of them's flat. The other's filled with obstacles. One of them's going uphill. We don't like to go uphill, do we? It's hard. But the question still remains, or the statement still remains, you're on one of the two. Which one? Which one? You see, when it comes to religion, there's only one way. When it comes to salvation, there's only one way. When it comes to the church, the Bible says there's only one. When it comes to the roads, Jesus says there's only one that goes to heaven. And I don't get to pick which one that is, do I? This morning I want to ask you something. Are you on the right road? Are you aware of what's going on around you? Are you prepared for all the things that you face? Or do you face it with your group and your help there with you? I mean, you've got to know these things. You've got to understand these things. You've got to be ready for these things. Because someday judgment is going to come, and which one of those paths you're on is going to determine your destiny. This morning, if you're not on the right path, we beg you to make that right. This morning, if you've never entered in by the narrow gate, we ask that you do that this morning. We've got water. We'll do exactly what Jesus said to do. Be baptized to wash away your sins. Become a New Testament Christian. At the same time, simultaneously adding you to His church, His body of believers. You can enter on that road. Maybe some this morning, maybe you've been on the road and you've turned back. Maybe you face obstacles that you thought were too hard. Maybe your attitude has been, I can't do it, and I give up, and every time I try, I fail, and I feel like that too sometimes. I fail at a lot of things. But the only thing I know to do is get back up and try again. Stay on the path. If there's something we can do to help you this morning, won't you come while we stand and while we sing?